to go and help other people. Ah, the video got cut off. Ah, no, it's not good. Not good at all. I went way too long on this one. I can't help it, but there's so much to say, guys, and to try to cover the ground, and you know. But like I was saying, is just do people have to? Maybe certain people. I've kind of felt like certain people like myself. Not to be a martyr, pariah, whatever I am, um, because I've lamented many times. But certain people have to be maybe the canaries in the coal mine, or the advisors, the visionaries, the people who maybe have suffered peculiar things, but it prepares them to lead, guide, and understand the evil and the path forward and the way to heal and rehabilitate and to come together. So it's interesting subjects. I mean, the tribe, every tribe has the warrior chief, but also the spiritual chief, right? The shaman or whatever. And so I think society seems to need that. You don't need everyone to be equally delved into the evil. I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe you do. I mean, is that what a rite of passage is for a young man? Like sticking your hands in like a bullet ant glove to suffer greatly? It's not evil. It's almost like a piece of evil, because like it's painful, incredibly painful. But it's almost like facing the pain or facing the evil is like a necessary part of maturing, becoming an adult. But I think even more than those things is the ability to understand the good and evil nature of things and how to face that difficulty and that evil. Anyways, interesting thoughts. I'm sorry the video got cut off. I hope whatever it loses a little bit, but I'm sorry. And I've just talked about so many subjects and things, it's hard to gather the thoughts. I should probably wrap it up there. Sit in silence for a minute here and see if there's anything left to say for the moment. What's the answer? Maybe it's a childish fantasy or immaturity or video gamer, whatever, but I have visions in my head of, you know, almost like a Conan the Barbarian, a He-Man, some kind of warrior who's buff and glorious and strong. Like many of these archetypal stories that we've had with the warriors and the princess and the good, glorious people and their kingdom. And, they're not ruled by the bureaucracy and the government and all the litigation and the neurotic nature of our world. My vision is almost like that for us, guys, that we would be like that. Each and every man to me ought to be a warrior, a priest, uh, a sovereign, ruler. We're all rulers, right? I rule myself. We're all rulers in society. I think giving every step of the way where we give up our power to someone else, whether it's an organization like the government or another person, that's like that's the weakening, right? To me, is that not it? Like, so that's one of the key ways that we've devolved as people, as glorious king, priests, demigods, is we devolve and we become these pathetic little subjugated creatures, like Gollum, guys. You become like Gollum. That's what we're becoming. It's the truth. We're becoming a society of golems, and in fact, people are starting to look like them too. They're looking like trolls and goblins and golems, right? They really are. Pierced all up, tattooed all up, freaky hair, you know, all that stuff, gothic stuff. And then like the beady-eyed little people that don't see sunlight, and they don't look healthy or strong. They don't have glory and righteousness beaming out of them. And the conversation shows it. It mimics it, right? I mean, it's right there, guys. The answer is right there. And how do you have that? And I'm not saying, I know people can criticize me. It's about the message, not about me. I'm nothing special. Many times in my life, I wished that I was just you know, sorry, but a regular person who could just kind of be happy and live a nice life. I wanted that. Um, but I don't know. Never seemed to be in the cards for me, and I tried. But but yeah, I mean, that's it, right, guys? Just it's like literally, it's like the actual literal Lord Sauron has been through the shadows corrupting us. It's true, just like Middle Earth, right? And soon that shadow taken over, and we'll be so weakened. Why? Because King Theoden was, yes, I guess he had a spell on him from Saruman, but he also had Grima Wormtongue with the poison in his ear, the bad counsel, right? The propaganda. I mean, and it put him into that shriveled, weakened up state where he was clouded, he couldn't think straight. That's us, guys. That's us. Like that's literally us. It's actually us. It's not a joke. It's the 100% reality. I really think so. So, should we stand up and be as warriors, priests, kings, queens of each and every one of us, ourselves and people, to live righteously, to live freely, to live in power? I don't know. I don't see another way. I've been, I wasn't satisfied. What I wanted to say was in the beginning of the um, scamdemic with the mandates. It's a bit too dark for me in this angle. I'm sorry. I just there. I feel like I'm a bit Dark Lord over here. I don't want to be too shadowy. It just doesn't feel right. But so in the beginning, like coming from the church that I was in my life, and that kind of knowing how they are, that and they were preaching for years. And of course, the Bible talks about this type of thing, and the way I was taught with the church, they preached for decades and decades that that one day that they'll close the church doors, that they'll shut us down. And in this case, that's not quite how we would have thought it would be through mask mandates and health regulations. Of course, they're open now, but when that test came to close the church doors, well, my church did it. They closed the doors and they had Zoom church, and that just didn't feel right to me, guys. That doesn't feel like power, righteousness, or glory to me. You know? So and so to me, like what I was talking about already, see, belief, like what's your belief? Where are your convictions, right? And now I'll also say faith is related to that. To me, it's like that kind of order. Belief, faith, conviction in an increasing order. Belief is like some of them are weaker, some of them are stronger, but they're more like you know, emotional, experiential, and then mental conceptions of things that you hold to varying degrees. Conviction to me is stronger where you act on it, right? Your behavior, your actions, and maybe under duress or test. And then faith is like the ultimate version of that. This is my personal, and I didn't create this, but faith is like the ultimate test that will see you through the worst of the worst in these. What the heck's happening with my phone? I don't know, but it's kind of weird. Anyways, yeah, faith. That's what I always thought, that faith, because the Bible talks about faith. Faith, it talks about it so much, and I think that there's a lot of contention and discussion about, well, what is faith? Do you have faith? This, that, and I don't think you can really see if you have faith. Like that's why, to me, the Bible says that precious is the death of his saints in the eyes of the Lord. If God sees that you're willing to go to your death for your faith, for your belief in God, in righteousness and power and truth, that's precious to him, because that's like the ultimate test, that he sees that you really believe it, you really know it, you really love it. It's like the ultimate test. And you know and to say that it's precious in his eyes doesn't mean he's like, oh, it's wonderful and happy. I think there's a difference, guys. Let's not be immature about it. It means that it's I mean, it's true. just think about it. Like if you had a son or like a father who sacrificed himself and died to save his son, and you're the wife, you don't think that'd be, in a sense, it would be precious to you that you and to the son, that that man, that father, that husband sacrificed himself to save him? That would be precious to you. It's still a sad tragedy or whatever, but the sacrifice for the son would be precious, right? And I think there's a similar dynamic there. So, all right, once again, I just go off, but this stuff is also related, guys. What is it? What is it? But that's where I was trying to bring it home, is like my experience. And I don't know if I was right. Sometimes I wonder if, Aaron, I had the best job of my life. I was in the best position of my life, at least I thought, in worldly success, which was not very high success by any measure. But to me personally, I was doing pretty well, and on the up and up. And because of expressing my beliefs and taking a stance against it, I lost that job. And then, I just spiraled downwards, and I suffered, and I lashed out, and I just flailed and reeled, and, bad things happened, and I did bad things. I mean, yeah, so sometimes I ask, well, Aaron, should I have just, happily went along with whatever the mandate said, whatever was necessary to keep my job, to be happy, play nice, appease everyone? And I wonder sometimes, but I didn't. And I think that's like a small testament, sometimes a big testament, to your beliefs, your conviction, and your faith ultimately. Is, because your mind can waver. Your mind wavers all the time. Your mind's not sure about anything hardly, right? But somewhere down in your heart, I believe that God knows your heart and what your true faith and belief is. And so, when that test came, and by whatever mechanism, some people will say, well, Aaron, you just wanted to be special. You wanted to rebel against authority, because you're dysfunctional and this and that, and you wanted to be in a special crowd of flat earthers and go protest, and because it's exciting and you get to have parties in the streets and dancing. Yeah, some people do say that. Some people think that. Some people believe it. Of course, I suffered a lot for that. So yeah, is it fun to dance in the street? Yeah, it is fun. You should try it sometime. Is it fun to have music and dancing and meeting people that are, for the most part, very like-minded? And yeah, that's awesome. What's wrong with that? I don't. So, anyways, but did I do it for that? Would I have traded where I'm at now and the suffering for the last 3 years for those parties in the streets and protests? And no, I honestly don't think I wouldn't have traded it for that. And I had some amazing, experiences, and met some really great people. But like, I don't want to suffer like this. I wish I had my old job and my car and a decent life and all my bills paid off, and building up my credit, because I'd be a frigging heck of a lot happier and in a better position right now. But that's one of the things of the Christian walk. Everyone criticizes Christianity these days or whatever, and maybe there is an ultimate fatal flaw in the Bible and in the way that Christianity is taught in most or all churches. Maybe there are fatal flaws in there, but to me, that's the most. At most, I think that there are some fatal flaws, one or maybe a few. But I think at the very least, the vast majority of the teachings are truth, light, righteousness, glory, love. So I'm not ashamed to talk about it and everything, and I'm willing to look and converse about those possible fatal flaws, whether they be or not. But when that test came for me, I spoke from my heart, and I lost my job, and I've been suffering, and I'm finding it increasingly difficult to interface. I find it's a funny word to use, but interface with the world, with people, with society, with work, with I question whether or not I'm capable anymore, and I've always struggled with it. So now at this point, with everything we've gone through, and to what? To pretend and ignore when people talk about vaccines or masks or how their mother's got cancer and blood clots or whatever's going on, and I'm supposed to just be like, "Hi, I'm working. I just praise the Lord. I just love everything's great. Thanks. Have a good day." And I just don't know if I can even do that. In fact, I'm quite certain that I can't do that. For a limited time, but no, I can't. I never have been able to do it, and I don't believe that I can do it. Um, and I don't think that people should do it. I think that's false. I think it's not true. I think that's not, that's on the Grima Wormtongue side. Okay, that's on the shriveled up little goblin side. When you don't speak what's on your heart. Everyone should speak what's on their heart. Jordan Peterson has talked about that. That's one of the main tenets of his message has been to speak your truth. Speak it strongly, right? And that's the same thing. What I'm saying is speak what's on your heart. I'm saying speak your truth. It's the same thing. And I think that that's one of the most ways to empower yourself in society. Everyone needs to speak up. Why are we so degraded and we've allowed so much is because too many people keep to themselves and turn the other cheek. And maybe that's the fatal flaw corruption of the Bible. Maybe that's the society that the rulers put in there to have a benign society that, just passively waits for God to do everything and makes them nice little Christians who don't stand up or fight or do anything. I mean, they work. It tells you to pay your taxes and work and to turn the other cheek. So maybe, if anything, I would say in my, without getting into a whole examination of it, I would say that that's perhaps the fatal flaw. And I'm not even sure because what we're up against, I don't know if we're capable, guys, of beating it. I just don't know. This is a big question for me. I was raised about these subjects, and I just don't know because it's a tough one. It's a tough one. Um, but we're here. I mean, we're here, guys. So what do we do? We just wait. Oh, the next generation will save it. God will come in the next generation. Maybe I grow old and die, and just being like, well, I waited and God's got a plan. Well, how many generations have been saying that? Will the next one say it? Like, why? Like, what's the point? I don't know. Maybe the aftermath is just too brutal for us to do it ourselves. I mean, how bloody and gruesome would it be for us to have to fight back ourselves and to rout the evil? Rout. R-O-U-T, rout. Extirpate. Nah, I don't know if you truly can do that. See, I guess that's like the question, because it seems that evil exists in a spiritual nature and within our own DNA or something, and that to try to fight against it. And see, this is what I have, kind of understood, and what I thought is why it teaches that is because it seems to be just inherent in our nature and in the world itself. That there's just corruption and that we cannot overcome it ourselves. I mean, that's the whole point of Christianity, is that you need Jesus and you need the Savior, and then he's gonna come back and basically wipe out the evil. That we can't do it ourselves. And I don't know, guys. To me, that's the only question. It's the only question. Can we do it, or can we not do it? But I mean, it's like it's hard. It's hard. Like, what do we do? The Bible doesn't say that there wouldn't be suffering, guys. Um, in fact, it says that there will be suffering, and of course, up to a certain point, it says that the elect or the believers, pardon me for not knowing off the top of my head, would be spared basically the worst of it, the tribulation. But it doesn't say. But there's still going to be suffering and trials up until like the worst of it. Um, so it's like, well, what does that mean exactly? Like, because if I should have, just been a good worker and kept to myself and kept my job and everything would have been peachy. I mean, it wouldn't have been totally peachy, but a lot more than what it was. Okay, but what if my job required a vaccine? What if I had a government job? or whatever job, but that they required me to take a vaccine to keep my job. Should I have done it then? Now I know some Christians, some people would say that, well, God would protect you. You can take it. God understands that you have to do it for your obligations, for your family, for your career, your job, to pay your bills and everything, and God would protect you. And I do believe that God will protect you from things, and that He's absolutely capable to protect you of anything. Anything. Should you do it though, knowing it's bad? Because the Bible says that, one of the signs of the believer would be that if they should drink any harmful thing, that they would not be harmed. Um, I don't know if it really gives any context about, I don't think that it does, but maybe the other Bible can flesh out this concept. And I believe it does, in saying that you're not supposed to tempt God and things like that. You're not supposed to take, as far as I understand, you're not supposed to take some bleach or poison and be like, well, God said it wouldn't harm me if I drink it. Prove yourself God, and chug it down. As far as I understand, you're not supposed to do that. But if you were coerced, if you were mistaken, if whatever situation, but this is one of the difficulties, because like in reality, sometimes people do have a child drinks some poison accidentally, and they end up in the hospital. But I mean, maybe they make a full recovery, and that's like one of the weird things I've always felt with my family and my life and my mother is like, there's always an answer. It's kind of like gravity. It's kind of like gravity. Any inexplicable or unaccounted for phenomena or this that. Well, how do they explain it? It's always gravity. It's always the answer. It's very magical, and it kind of feels like that's the answer with God in some of these situations, because it's like, if your loved one, for example, accidentally drinks poison and they're completely unharmed, you're all going to be saying it's a miracle. These scriptures were true, and God protected her. Our little girl drank bleach accidentally, whatever, and didn't die, and she's not even sick. It's a miracle. And I think anyone would admit that that's amazing, and many people, even non-Christians, would probably say that's a miracle. Sure, but what if they did get sick? Maybe they made a recovery. Then the answer would change. Oh, well, it's a test. It's a test. God allowed it, but He preserved her. He kept her alive, and she made a full recovery, or maybe she made mostly recovery, but she'll live normally. It's like, so the answer always varies. There's always an answer, which does leave you unsatisfied to me. Or if the child dies, what if the child just died? Then they'd say, oh, well, she's home with God now. It was her time to go. For whatever reason, God knew that, some horrible thing was going to happen to her later in life, and He's protecting her from that. And so He took her out this way. I've heard all these types of answers for various events that happen. And I don't know, is that really satisfying, guys? I mean, it's like gravity. It's just like a magical answer. And so, I mean, I just feel like is that like the answer's kind of there, right? Like we have to, I don't know, help me out, guys. Like, what is the answer? I know I've heard of amazing stories of like healings, or people being protected or preserved, or, if a tornado tears down the whole house, but the Bible is untouched, and things like that. And, I've always believed in miracles. And, Eric or anyone could criticize me and say, oh, well, you're believing in something that is scientifically doesn't make sense, or this, that, and the other. I think science does attest that miraculous things can happen. Maybe it's not. I mean, it's not every day, so you can't have a repeatable thing that you get to observe and test and be like, see, it's a miracle. I mean, but I think that there is evidence. I would believe and presume. I think I've seen it, and many of us have seen it and experienced it in our own lives. And scientists observe the capacity for miraculous or seemingly miraculous things to take place. When someone comes out of a coma, or someone survives after having half their head blown off, or whatever it is, overcoming cancer, or there's a number of things, or just there's many, many scenarios. It's not all about health and healing, that could be qualified as miraculous. And then, we know about the nature to some degree of spiritual reality and invisible reality of, waves and frequencies and vibrations and patterns and all these things. Um, and the fact that we're all here, like, it's a miracle that, I mean, there you go, right? Like, she was saying, just the other day about the miracle that each of us was born. So, like, the fact that we're even here is a miracle. So to discount it, that there could be something that defies science or defies our understanding, to me, that's like cynical. I like to believe that all things are possible, and I don't think that that's illogical or nonsensical. In fact, I think it's empowering and true. Like, the fact that we're here, to me, proves it. It proves it all by itself. And I know that some of these things are hard concepts for people to understand, and some of them might seem contradictory or whatever. Um, I don't think so. But those are conversations to be had and experiences to be had. So I don't know, where am I in this talk? I think the video is going to cut off here soon. I'm almost at an hour, so the last one was 30 minutes. Maybe I'll just wait. Cue the Jeopardy music. I did not mean for this to be a long video. It's really developed. So I'm not bragging, but like, when I get into these talks, these self talks or whatever, these stream of consciousness, I think it's inspired. But like, I surprise myself, sometimes, the things that develop out of it through thinking, inspiration, whatever. Um, you know, so, and in fact, this is the way I operate, because if I tried to write down everything and do it in a structured way, that's why I do it like this. That's a part of the reason my life is the way it is because throughout my life, people who knew me well, my own family, but other people as well, who knew me for many years, would try to counsel me, and admirably so, to Aaron, go to school, prepare. Okay, you're a speaker. Well, make some speeches and do this and structure it, and or write a books, write whatever. And I was always like, no, I can't. I'm a speaker. I have to speak it. It's not the same. It's not the same thing to write something. I mean, clearly it's not the same, right? And people, I don't know if they really understand just the true nature of how it's different. And anyways, this is just my experience. So when I speak about things, things can just come up. It's like a garden and the flowers. If you're able to garden the idea and the concepts and whatever, and well, people have different gifts and things, so I can't just say it's me. Like, I think any gifts that you have is God given, right? Because I didn't create myself, you didn't create yourself, but you can nurture your gifts and work on skills, and those are all things. But I think I have a gift for these things, and I know that's part of the interesting nature of it as well, is like the gift, but it's what was the gift born out of suffering and trauma. In my childhood, I'm like kind of fractured and messed up. um I think that's kind of how it works. Like, the cloud has a silver lining, and the Bible says that God is able to use, what is that scripture? It's something like that even the bad things, like, God is able to use all things together for the good to those who love God. That's the one. And so it means, like, even the bad, evil things, everything, God's able to use all that stuff together for the good. And you're like, well, how? Like, what? Like, it's a weird thing, and that's why I say it's kind of a quandary for, I think, people to understand. And maybe I'm just a you know indoctrinated person who was raised in the church, and I'm believing something contradictory. Maybe, guys, you can try to convince me. I haven't seen it yet, quite, in my life, to just show me that it's wrong. I just am what I am, and I'm speaking what I'm speaking here. But I don't know if it started a new video. Maybe I missed the message, but oh, I lost my train of thought. What was I just saying? Tell me. You can't tell me, can you? That's why it's funny. But yeah, speaking. There was a message in the church that I grew up in called The Darkest Hour, or maybe just Darkest Hour. And the premise of the message is that Jesus always shows up at the darkest hour. And, you know, things can be bad and you're like, "Oh, where's God?" And then things get worse and you're like, "Oh man, I could really use some help." And then things get worse and you're like, "God hates me, I wish I was never born." And then they get even worse. And you're just like, "Well, I'm a dead, I'm a goner," like you're staring in the maw of a lion or whatever it is, and these stories in the Bible of like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego going into the chamber of fire, and or being in the den of lions, these types of things, or there's so many stories in the Bible like that. And then he says, well, Jesus shows up at the darkest hour, right? When your faith was really tested, and he saves you then, if you passed that faith test or challenge or whatever. And I mean that makes sense. It does make sense to me. Um, if he just prevented everything bad from happening, there'd be no test, there'd be no maturity, there'd be no learning, no edification, there'd be no revelation of glory, right? I mean, that's what the Bible's all about. That's what I was taught and heard so much preaching about. That it says throughout the Bible that and it can seem in some ways like God is selfish, and I guess he kind of is, except that his selfishness is like all loving. It turns out I think selfishness has such a bad rap, just like anger has a bad rap. It's like all anger is bad. Well, no, not all anger is bad, and maybe not all selfishness is bad. I mean, because in a sense, let's say, and I think that this is true. Like, so if I'm a man and I have I take a wife and I beget a family, so I have some children, and I know, hopefully there's clarity within me about my vision for my rulership, leadership, um, and the estate and the affairs, the prosperity, the future, the livelihood, the thriving, all these things for myself, my wife, my children, right? The family, the household, my business, whatever. And no one else is going to know quite what I know and quite what I see, what my vision is. Nobody else is going to know. How can you? It's within me. And many times we don't fully know, or we have doubts about it. And, it's a difficult thing. But in a sense, you might have to be selfish to stick to follow your vision, to to weed out the weeds in your life or in your thinking or whatever it is, uh, not just for your benefit but for your family, because a good man wants to benefit his family. So you could even say like part of your selfishness would be to prosper your family, like. So I think there's a whole conversation to be had there, and I think that's true. um, my selfishness can include beneficial benefits to others. And so I think, God, because in the Bible, God definitely says many times, it is said that, um, I forget the specific sayings. It shouldn't, because they're very simple and it's repeated a lot. But like, all things are done for like